Nicky Del Rey, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
We're chatting today because you've got this fabulous new surf rock music album out under the band's name, Nicky Del Rey'S Misadventures. What was your initial attraction to surf rock music?
I think the age that I am, it was always there in the background. You would hear it on the radio. Um, but the main thing, though, I think the main thing that attracts me to it is actually the guitar sound, that Fender sound with the reverb added to it or going through the reverb. It's just a sound that's very attractive to my ear. I guess it appeals to my tonal center, I would say.
You weren't a surfer back in the day?
Oh yes, I used to surf. I started when I was about 13 or 14, and we had a family beach house down the west coast of Victoria, and that's what you did. You just surfed,
Yeah,
unless the weather was really bad. But even then, sometimes we'd go out when we were young.
yeah. So, who were the main guitar heroes, the guys whose licks you tried to copy?
Well, initially, when I first started taking guitar lessons, it was in the 70s. Um, and so it was sort of what was on the radio is what I was getting into. I remember, I mean, we'd hear like on the radio there'd be Lynyrd Skynyrd and some of the southern rock, like the Allman Brothers. That appealed to me initially. Uh, but I'd always been listening to country music, and we did live in the country for a while. And so I guess the first guitar players that I really loved the sound of were the telly players like James Burton, who was playing with Elvis and people like that. I guess Reggie Young also played with Elvis and a lot of other people. So I get it was the Telecaster sound that really appealed to me. And when my guitar teacher got a telly, I remember here, it was just like, oh, this is the sound. This is the sound. When I hear a guitar, that's the sort of sound I think of.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, what's the perfect surf guitar tune?
Well, one of the songs we have on the album, Diamond Head, I love that song. That's a Ventures song. I also love Journey to the Stars, which is an amazing Ventures song. Um, but then, almost like the ultimate surf song is like Bombora, which was by the Atlantics, a Sydney band from the early 60s, which has all the sounds, but it's a very exciting song. It has movements in it. Um, yeah, they'd probably be the ones that sort of stand out to me.
Yeah. And why did you choose these band members for the style of music to form the Misadventures?
Well, I've been playing country music with Layla Jean, who plays the second guitar in the band. So I've been in bands with her for about 10 years or more. But initially, she wasn't in the band. I was sort of in a house band at the old Luau in Johnson Street, Fitzroy, with Luis Sanchez and Tom Heathcote, and we were sort of just backing the owner of the nightclub and some other people there. And then we just said, why don't we start our own surf band because we all loved surf music. Intoxica, which both Lewis and I were in, also always played surf instrumentals and Link Ray songs. So it just evolved out of that. And
Yeah.
then Lewis left, and I got Dave Foley in playing drums, who I work with in a few other projects. And Layla begged to join the band. She she asked her because we were a three-piece to start with.
Uh, the drums are a big part of surf rock. I, I believe it was Lewis on the recording, but Dave is the stage guitarist. Sorry,
Yes,
the stage
yeah,
drummer.
Dave Foley. Lewis was on the record, and he's an amazing drummer. Has an incredible groove, but he sort of has started to have too many other commitments, and he lives a large part of the year back in Spain now. So and Dave's there. Dave's a fantastic drummer, and they should love it. Surf music is, to me, it's nearly all about drums a lot of the time. There's so many drum solos and drum features, and the grooves are incredible with all that tom. The toms in surf music really get you.
Yeah. What was the inspiration to turn Nirvana's Heart-Shaped Box into a surf tune?
Well, I always love the melody in that song. It's a great it's a great melody, fantastic melody, and the chord progression is actually cross between like a surf music spy movie type chord progression. That A major F D major, but it's like I think even the James Bond music has that chord progression in it somewhere. Um, but also, Nirvana is a Seattle band. It's a West Coast band, and his melodies are incredible, and he had the great sound. And I just thought, this melody's going to sound. Oh, I mean, I just used to play the melody on the guitar, and it sounded great.
Yeah. You mentioned it before, Diamond Head is a track that you love, acknowledging the home of surf in Waikiki. Also tracks you've written, Point Impossible and Point Addis. Was it important to name check Australian places too?
Well, I thought, why not? Why not? And there are places down the west coast there that I'm familiar with, and there are plenty more Australian breaks to add as I compose more songs. Don't you worry. And because I mean, there's some great Australian surf break names. Just like Winky Pop. This is just in Victoria. There's Winky Pop. There's South Side. There's Bells Beach. There are plenty more. There's Joanna, and this is in this state alone. There are plenty of fantastic beach break names to put to songs. That's for sure.
Yeah. So there are 10 tracks on the album. Were there many others you were considering for this first album?
Oh, yes. Well, some gigs we have to do, say, 3 45-minute sets. So we've got a large repertoire. There are plenty of classic instrumentals that we'd like to put on. Some are almost, too obvious, like Wipeout and Pipeline and things like that. But, well, I mean, Bombora in itself, but there are plenty more we could use. But the idea is to write more original compositions.
Yeah.
And there are some on the way. There are some on the way.
Yeah. Tell me about your Esquire telly that you use. How did you acquire it? Is there a story behind it?
Well, yes, I'd always wanted an Esquire, and they just hardly ever pop up. They made there are the odd reissues that come out of the United States, and they made a Mexican series of them for a little while, and I never got one. And then in the pandemic, you're sitting around, so I'm, looking at guitar porn on the internet, and I see this Esquire for sale, and it's a, a 2007 reissue from the custom shop when they made a limited run of 1959 spec Esquires, and it's a top-loading bridge, which only came out in 1958, 59, and it does sound different than a regular telly. It's a little bit spankier and poppier, but it also seems to sustain more, bizarrely enough. And so I saw this guitar. It was on Reverb and it was on eBay or something, and so I thought I'll ring the store directly. And anyway, the store is owned by what's his name? I'll think of it shortly. But the guy in the store in Sydney said, I spoke to him and asked him about the weight, and he said, "Oh, it's a great weight," because I couldn't try it out.
Mm.
And he said it's light, it's under 7 pound. The guy who bought it was a collector, so it's still got bits of plastic on it. It's hardly been played, and he sent it down to me, and at a great price. And since I got it, I've hardly played any of the other tellies I have. I just can't. I haven't played them. I haven't played them. This guitar, I don't know, it seems to have its own personality. It's light. And because it was black, I don't know, there was something about it. It was the first time since I was young that I stood in front of a mirror with a guitar around my neck, and just looked at myself. I thought, I like this guitar. Yeah,
So
it's fantastic.
what are you playing it through?
On the album and for gigs with bigger stages and bigger rooms, I play through an April '64 Fender Bandmaster that I bought in 1984. So it was 20 years old then, and I've had it a long time, and it sounds amazing. And it's a surf era amp, with the blonde Tolex on it. And I run it through, I have a reverb unit in front of it, which was a traditional surf sound. They didn't have the reverb in the amps, they had the unit. So the unit ran before the preamp, whereas the reverb in the combo amps is in between the preamp and the power amp. So it's slightly a different sound. The reverb unit actually pushes the amp, and you can hear in Point Impossible, when I was recording it, I accidentally kicked the reverb unit. You can hear it splash. And then the engineer said, "Oh, no, we'll add some more of that, kick the unit some more." And I also used on 3 of the tracks just a 1965 Princeton reissue, which is an incredible sounding amp. That does have the reverb in the amp, and I use that for smaller rooms and gigs with smaller stages, and because the bandmaster you've got the head and the cabinet, so it's a fair bit to carry around.
Yeah, I imagine the pedal setup would be quite sparse.
Well, except for the tuner and the reverb unit, often that's it. I do have sometimes I run a small overdrive unit, which is called or a Wampler Bell pedal. It's a small pedal. It's made by a guy in the States, and it's sort of meant to be like a Noble's OD, which is like a really light overdrive that sounds like a crank tube amp. So sometimes I use that, if I can't actually crank the amp, to make it sort of sound like the amp's overdriven. A Wampler Bell. It's called a Wampler Bell,
Yeah.
the
Uh,
little pedal. But that's it. Yeah, I mean, ideally, if the mixers and sound engineers let you get away with it, the cranked amp sounds the best to me for this sort of music.
yeah. What about recording the guitar parts for the album? Was there any straight into the desk, or was it all miking
No,
out?
no, I used the amps. The amps were mic'd. It was usually one close mic, like a 57, and then I think he was using a Neumann. Craig Harneth was recording it at Hot House in St Kilda, and he, yeah, usually one close mic and one mic a bit further away, but always through the amp.
Yeah,
And I was working the amps, so they were sort of running hot, so they there was a bit of that natural amp compression happening there.
yeah.
I
How
think the bass might have gone direct into the desk, but maybe through some compressors and limiters first, but not through an amp.
how fussy were you with your guitar takes? Did you do many?
Well, if the first one was good, we just went with that.
Yeah,
And there were some songs that, when you're recording 10 of them and you get to one and you just get a bit stuck on some bits, so you might do a couple of takes, might have even I can't remember which songs were which, but even some I might have dropped in. And also, I've got to admit, there's some solos I actually took notes out to make them more sparse. Sometimes you get excited and overplay. Um, but yeah, they were pretty much straight takes, very little dropping in, and sometimes the first or second take.
yeah. You had a launch a couple of weeks ago, I think. Any more gigs coming up for this band?
Yes, we've got March, what am I talking about? November 21 at the Merry Creek Tavern in Northcote. We're doing sort of a north side launch there, and it's a very intimate venue. It's only 50 people. So that'll be great. We have Alison Ferrier, who's a fantastic guitar player. She's opening for us solo. So that'll be great. That's November 21. Then I've got a whole lot with the Cartridge Family, which is another band that I'm in that has an album coming out, and that includes going to Tamworth. So that's December and January getting full. And then the Misadventures, this band, I think the first gig we have scheduled in the new year is February 1, opening for Ross Wilson at one of his shows. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might even be at Crown or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I believe there's a vinyl version available on Bandcamp.
It's available on Bandcamp and also at some great stores like Greville, Muscle Shoals on the north side, um, Plug 7 in Smith Street. There's another one in Brunswick. I can't remember the names of all the stores, but they're at a few stores. But yeah, Bandcamp, if you want to order the album, and digitally it's on the platforms as well, like Spotify and iTunes and things like that. So it's around. But Bandcamp, if you want me to send it to you, or alternatively, if people want to come to the gig, it'll be for sale there, the vinyl.
And how's 2025 looking for Nicky Del Rey?
Well, it's looking good. Hopefully, we just keep building gigs up on this, and that new Cartridge Family album will get some interest. But definitely want to make another record next year, and it'll either be first. I'm not. See, this is you don't have to make a whole album now. You can just make individual tracks and release them digitally. So I want to do more surf, and we might do individual tracks to start with. But I also have a whole lot of country music material, which ironically uses the same amplification and guitars as surf music, just with the reverb turned down. So yeah, I want to make some more country music as well next year. That's for sure.
All right, Nicky, it's been great to catch up and all the best with the album.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.